first episode of 2023, we talked to the fantastic Sophie Ebrard. We talk about her experience becoming a mother and dealing with that on set, chat about her personal work, and bizarrely hers and Greg's experience as a porn sets. She also happened to take one of my favourite photos ever, so that was quite nice. Myself and Greg opened the show by chatting about New Year's resolutions. Now we're sort of keeping to them, but we really talk about our plans for the show. So grab a coffee and enjoy. Hello, mate. How are you? Happy New Year.
How are you? Yeah, I'm good. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to all the listeners. This is our first episode of 2023.
Yeah, 2023. Let's go. Ready for the year?
Well, I've got a stinking cold.
It's a solid start, isn't it?
Oh, January. You got to love it. Yeah, no, I'm feeling pretty good. Feeling kind of fairly pumped for the year. How about yourself? I know that I didn't sound very pumped.
Yeah, I'm going to pull you up on that straight away. I'm feeling pretty pumped for the year. Yeah,
I mean, you know me right now. That's
I mean, that's you being positively. Yeah, I'm vibing off your excitement there. I'm just like, damn, this guy. No, but I am. Maybe I bring the optimism in the voice. I'm super excited for this year. Everything is. Let me fill you in on the start of the year I've had. I took a 2-week holiday, which was amazing. Had a great time, flown back, and I've gone straight into a week of shoots with jet lag. That's been less than ideal, but the shoots have been great, so it kind of balances out. What happened yesterday evening was less than exciting, and I restarted my backup server, and it didn't turn on again. It died, like full on died. At 5:15. And I'm like, oh God, this is like the first week of January for me, like properly working. And my backup server has just full on just died. I was like, oh, right, crap. So I rung Broadband Buyer, I think, who I get my NAS stuff from. And I was like, what can I do about it? And they were like, oh, you bought it from us 2.5 years ago, so it's out of warranty. So you can take it to the recycling tip. And I was like, what? Sorry, hang on. You want me to take a £2,500 server and just throw it away? And they were like, no, you misunderstand. Recycle it. And I was like, no, hang on. I think you misunderstand me. I want this repaired. I want this £2,500 server repaired. But it apparently is not economical to repair, so they refuse to do it. And that's not them refusing to do it, it's the manufacturer. And I was just like, what a waste of plastic, metal, all sorts. Yeah. I'm sure it's just the motherboard that's gone, so they just refuse to repair it. And I was like, oh, right, great. So I yesterday had to drop $2,500, which I hadn't budgeted for, and have now miraculously have plugged in all the hard drives in the exact same order from the previous one. And this is if you've got a QNAP NAS and the unit fails, one of their amazing features, I plugged in all the hard drives in the same order, turned it on, did a firmware update, logged into it like it was the old unit. All my data's still there. Everything. It's like the old unit, and that's amazing. That is expensive. Don't get me wrong. Would have much rather have not spent that money, but it's been a bit of a hiccup as opposed to an absolute ball ache.
So it was the actual unit itself that failed, or the drives failed? It was just
correct. Yeah, the drive's absolutely fine. It was the unit itself, which I didn't think those things failed. I mean, it's doing nothing. It's literally sat there under the desk doing nothing. But yeah, no, it failed. Just full on, just DOA. Wouldn't turn on, nothing. No lights. It was ropey.
Scary moment.
But other than that, everything I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am for this year. We've had a couple of years now where it's just been rubbish, but this one, I know there's load like economic stuff going on and all that kind of malarkey, but I genuinely do feel like really positive for this year. Yeah, do you know what? I'm just ignoring that for the moment because I think it'll all get bogged down in legal stuff. I don't know if you've seen, but Getty are suing one of the guys, I think at Midjourney, and there's another lawsuit coming in, and that's just going to bog everything down. It's the type of thing that the technology is classic case of technology is like
leaps and bounds ahead of the law, and the law's going to take a while to catch up. To be like, hang on, how does this affect, the idea of intellectual property and all sorts of things which just weren't designed with AI in mind.
No, I think. Do you know what? I think the subject of AI is weighing on a lot of people's minds, and I think we should do it doesn't warrant a couple of minutes in an intro. We need to do a
also needs to be somebody on who's probably a bit more down, with it than us.
Hey, I mean, me and you have like been talking about this 3 months, and we've properly researched it and been doing stuff with it. So, like, I mean, we're quite. But yes, I do agree. I think we should get in somebody. But we've got some great people coming up. To be fair, we've kind of reached out, including a chat potentially with Capture One, which is I'm quite excited about. Have you seen your email?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. But my let me go back to why I'm so excited for this year. I read on holiday an amazing book called "Manage Your Day to Day." This is this is the catchy part of the title. Build your routine, find your focus, and sharpen your creative mind. It's by Behance. Behance, the website, have an educational wing called 99U, and they have a series of books. And I was a bit kind of skeptical about it, but actually it's really good.
What's it called?
Manage your day to day, build your routine, find your focus, and sharpen your creative mind. But don't worry, we'll put a link in the show notes.
Was this a book that you just couldn't find off camera?
I've no idea where it is. It's, when you get back from holiday.
How's that sharpened mind of yours?
Oh man, it's so sharpened, and the routine of losing things has absolutely been built upon. But no, okay, I don't know.
Give us some takeaways.
Do you know what? Well, do you know what was really frustrating is I wanted to give you some takeaways, but because I can't find the book, I have a feeling I gave the rucksack I used on holiday was too small, so I gave it away to a friend, and I have a feeling the book is in the front pocket of it. So not only have I given away one of the best books I've read, I've given away a backpack. So that's gone well. But it's all about freeing yourself of distractions and basically self-control and building a routine and no tech in the bedroom and don't work all hours of the day because working from 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 a.m. is not conducive to producing your best creative work. And there's a couple of things where it says...
the last time I worked till 2 a.m.
Oh, I was working till 2 a.m. last night. So as you can tell, I've really paid attention to the book. But there's loads of stuff. So I have got here, one of the things it says is have a little card under your computer monitor or a sticker on your monitor or something, and you have your goals for the year that you want to achieve. And so you see them every single day, and you know what you're working towards because you have these goals under your computer. And, for years, I've been kind of like, someone would be like, what's your goal? What's your aim? And I'd be like, well, I don't know, earn a living in photography? I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it that much. But now I won't read my goals out because they're obviously incredibly personal. But
I can see it says grow a beard.
No, it's actually, you've misread it. It says grow a proper beard. Because I don't know, have you ever seen me with a beard? No. Very funny story. I'll do it very quickly. I went to Egypt once, and I had a beard. Now my beard, when I grow it, is like basically just a huge amount of pubic hair on the face, curly, not very well kept, and I have a patch here which doesn't grow. Right. There's too much information, I'm sure. But in Egypt, for some reason, everyone was laughing at me. And then when I would look at them laughing, they would stop and look really dead, like scared of me. And I was just like, this is like the oddest reaction ever. So I asked the person in the gift shop why they were laughing at me. And she said, there's a group of people who live here in Egypt who don't shave and who are kind of like the Amish. And people ridicule them, but they only ridicule them to a point because they've got guns. And I was like, do they really think I am one of these guys who live? I don't look very Egyptian. And so, yeah, apparently they must have mistaken me. I mean, the beard was terrible, so I shaved it straight off. But that was the one time I'd properly grown it. But, wow. Yeah, that is on the list. So, who knew? But it's I think it's a really good little thing to have your goals under there and limit your exposure to social media.
Yeah.
I think I talked in the last intro about a lovely quote by Theodore Roosevelt. Did I tell you about this?
Yeah.
Comparison is the thief of joy. Well, I've got another one that I've lifted from this book, and I can tell you this word for word because I have one of my things this year is getting rid of all the clutter. So my desktop now, if I go to it, and I can tell you that my desktop now has so it has my hard drive, my external hard drive, and a link to my file service, my online file service. And that's it. And I have a completely black background, which then it cycles through 5 motivational quotes. Because I'm like so zen now, the motivational quote that is currently on the screen, which is one of my favorite quotes ever, is you'll worry less about what others think of you when you realize how seldom they do. And I'm like, that's a genius quote, because I'm sure you're the same as me, worrying like, or you have worried in the past about, what are people going to think of this? What are people going to think of that? Are people going to like this? Are they going to think that I'm silly? Or are they going to, is the work going to be, not to their taste? Well, it doesn't matter because they're not thinking about you. The fact that you are worried about what they think, it's like that classic, you're making 2 mistakes, right? You're caring what people think, and you're thinking that people care.
Yeah.
No one is involved or as involved or cares enough about our work as us. And so to think that other people care as much as we do is a properly silly thing to do. And you waste your time unnecessarily, and you lose kind of so much.
Do you think that's a good message for our listeners at the beginning of the year, to basically be like, no one cares about you?
Well, look, no, that's not, no, everyone cares about you. We all love you and adore you. Everyone thinks you're fantastic, but don't pay attention and don't do your thing. Like, right. Yeah. Don't pay attention to what other people are saying on Instagram or what you might think that they're thinking.
And I mean, social media is a real black hole for that, isn't it? Because people,
God, isn't it?
Get so caught up in it.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do. I've got a screen time. If you've got an iPhone, enable screen time. I'm allowed, and I enjoy it.
After your recommendation, actually, I'm pretty sure every time it's come up with your screen time is because I've limited it to something like 10 minutes or something, which is never enough. So every time it comes up, I'm like, ignore for today. Ignore for today.
Well, I'm not allowed to. I've got this self-control. I'm focused on this
even having
thing.
even having it on there is quite useful because it does remind you, like, okay, you've been looking at this for however.
Yeah, 100%. Well, even if, for example, you hit remind me in 15 minutes and then you see it again, you're like, oh, that means I've spent 25 minutes of my day scrolling through Instagram. And I'm not being productive on it. I'm not messaging people, or I'm not kind of researching or finding. I'm watching videos of animated people talking about their name. Like, it's actually a very funny one. I'll put a link to it. But
please don't.
My name's what? What's your name? It's very funny. But it's. I got told something.
I think for me, for me though, recently Instagram has kind of done that for me because it's got so bad in terms of what it feeds, random shit in the algorithm, the amount of adverts. I've kind of stopped actually enjoying using it anyway.
It's funny you say that. I've not spoken to a single photographer, creative person. I've not spoken to a single person in the creative industries. Because I talk to people across all of the creative industries, obviously, but I've not spoken to anyone who's enjoying it.
Yeah.
And you go, well, why are you doing it? I'm going to put up the occasional thing, some work, and probably some behind the scenes stuff, right? And that's because that's what I want to put up, and that's how much enthusiasm I have for it. I don't feel the need now to curate a beautiful portfolio.
No, I was
like
never
that.
any good at really creating a nice feed. I just kind of put work up as and when. But what I've started doing is actually scheduling everything and having a set day in the week when all of my social stuff is done. So to go back to what you were saying earlier about kind of structuring your days, that's something I brought in as a New Year's resolution for this year. So I have, and what it means is that I know that, say, Mondays is a social media day and Tuesday is a research day and Wednesday is maybe like a business admin day. If ever because I'm having to structure my week at the moment into those 3 days, Monday to Wednesday, because of having 2 little ones at home that I need to be, helping out with on Thursdays and Fridays. That means that I am having to kind of compact everything into those 3 days every week. But it also means that if I go in and it's a Wednesday and I'm kind of like, well, I haven't really got anything I need to do today, I will always have something. Yeah. It's almost like to-do lists are great, but they become overwhelming. Whereas if you go in and you go, well, Wednesday is business admin day, there's going to be something on the to-do list that's relevant to that, and ignore everything else because that happens on other days. And it helps you kind of focus and get stuff off the to-do list, which otherwise just gets pushed slowly towards the bottom.
It's interesting you mentioned to-do lists. The book that I was reading, it also talks about inbox zero and your to-do list. And it's like, you need to find out what time of day you're more productive. Do you get up early and work in the quiet of the morning, and can you attack your really big creative tasks then, like creating your portfolio or creating a mailer or something like that?
I wish I had quiet of the morning.
Well, I know, right? If I'm doing quiet of the morning, I'm up at 4. But it talks about don't overload your to-do list with a lot of kind of mundane tasks. And one of the things I got told years ago is, if something's going to take you less than a minute, do it. Just do it there and then. And then you don't have to worry about it becoming and adding to the mountain of tasks that we, as business owners, we have to do everything in our businesses. And just don't add to your workload. Just, pick it up, put it in the bin, or send that email, or upload that file, whatever it is. If it's going to take you less than a minute, just do it there and then.
Yeah.
I also saw another thing where you have to start the day by making your bed.
Okay.
I don't know if you know this, but there's a little trigger and a small dopamine hit that happens every time you complete a task. That's why a lot of people like having a paper to-do list, because the physical act of crossing through a to-do list item is gives you more of a dopamine hit than clicking complete on a to-do list. Whereas if you, it was a speech given at a university ceremony in America by a guy in the Navy. I think he might have been like top of the Navy or something. It's on YouTube. I'll try and find the link. Really interesting. But he says, start the day by making your bed, because that is the first task done.
Yeah.
You don't have to build up to it. You've done it. You've broken the seal of tasks for the day. You don't have to worry. You just approach the next task as like just another thing on the list, because you don't have to psych yourself up. You don't have to prepare for it. You've made your bed, and you're done. You're good. But it's an odd one, because not everyone sleeps in normal beds. Vampires, for example. I totally get it.
Got any of those listening to the show? But
well, they're hanging upside down. I always wondered how vampires poo. But anyway, that's not where that's not. I think we should do a separate episode on that. Sorry. Anyway, but yeah, long story short, I am so enthusiastic for this year. I think me, you, all the listeners, we're all going to have an amazing year. And yes, we're going to have our challenges. We would be really immature or naive to think that we won't, but we are professional problem solvers. Without being funny, get a challenge in. All right, it's cool. I'll deal with that. You've been dealing with these challenges your entire career. It's just another year. But this year, I think, is going to be a good one.
Well, on that note, should we dive into this week's show?
Yeah, it's an awesome one, isn't it? We've got Sophie Ebrard, and it's an awesome chat. So, yeah.
Sit back and enjoy. This week on the show, we're very glad to be joined by fantastic photographer Sophie Ebrard, who started off her career kind of in the advertising world and actually switched to becoming a photographer or being a photographer about 12 years ago now. Sophie's calling in from Amsterdam today, I believe. Sophie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So just for our listeners, I mean, I would be surprised if there are people that haven't kind of seen your work. It's always difficult with photographers to necessarily recognize the name, but your work's been out there for a long time. You've won a lot of awards. You're with a very prestigious agency here in London, White Clark Jones. And, you know, you've been involved in the OP before. So I think people will have come across your work, but can you just give us a bit of a background into your journey into photography?
Sure. Well, so as you said, I was not a photographer at first. I was working in advertising. I was surprisingly an account person when I left the industry. I think it was amazing to work in advertising, and I'm really fond and passionate about the industry. But there was something that was really missing, and I didn't really know what it was until I found that it was photography. And then the minute I kind of got it, it was just, I don't know, I got swallowed by it, and then I became a photographer. And I had a burnout after 10 years, and I had a bit of money on the side, and I thought, let's just give it a go. It's quite tricky because there's a lot of people who want to be a photographer, and then there's a few that succeed really in making it a career. So I went to see this guy who I had shot before, because he was one of the photographers who was on one of my shoots. And I went to see him, and I was like, hey, how can I become a photographer? It's like asking a Formula 1 driver, how can I be a pilot like you? Because he was really like that. His name is Norman Jean Roy. He was really recognized in the industry. He was fashion photographer, a really big name. He was shooting huge names, shooting lots of celebrities, and amazing. And he gave me a quite valuable advice. He said, why don't you just buy a camera and take pictures and build a portfolio? Which, well, sounds a bit stupid, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. I needed someone who's going to say, you don't need to go to art school. You don't need anything. You just need to, crack on with it, really. And so I did. And so I put together my portfolio. And at the time, 12 years ago, I think Instagram was not that big. And I didn't have that much experience in knowing who were the photographers who were out there. And, my knowledge was quite limited, which is which was really amazing for that, because I got straight to the point, quite quickly. I knew what I wanted to shoot quite quickly, and I didn't follow someone's style, or because I didn't assist. Sometimes when you assist, you also end up going into the other people's style. So because I didn't assist, I think I went quite quickly to what I wanted to shoot and how I wanted to shoot it, which was great. And then I had friends in the industry, in the advertising industry, who gave me my first job. So my first job was for Mother, who that is a really good agency in London. And it was literally 2 months after I decided to be a photographer. I'll just pose saying that a month before, I think I didn't really know what f-stop and aperture meant, which is quite basic, right? So I went on doing this shoot, a bit crazy, a bit naive that I could do it, but I actually did it. And the picture is still part of my portfolio. I still like it. And then I had more commissions, and then got an agent. And yeah, the rest, Well, yeah. And then if you want a bit of background, yeah. So I think I had a major breakthrough with my first exhibition. It's called It's Just Love. I don't know if you've seen the work. So it's a project that was shot within the porn industry. So I followed a porn director for 4 years on his set. So this is the series, It's Just Love. And it was exhibited during Unseen in Amsterdam in 2015. And yeah, the sex sells, I can tell you, because it went viral in 5 minutes. And I had more articles than I've ever had in my entire life. I think I probably had 300 articles all over the world. and suddenly gained so many followers. But yeah, that was kind of how it really started to work for me as a photographer. And that's when I started to have more commissions.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing that work at the time. It was all over the place, and yeah, it was beautifully shot. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's kind of these moments that are kind of between scenes and behind the scenes, kind of slightly abstract shots during the scenes, and they are incredibly like painterly. Almost look like kind of neoclassical works of art. There's a real, I don't know, there's a really interesting sense to them. How did you go about shooting that in terms of, you know, are you a natural observer, do you think? Because they are very observed pictures.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, no, I think I am a natural observer, and it's funny you say they're painting like, and I really like what you said, because when I was researching for this project, I was spending time at the National Gallery, and I was studying the work of Caravaggio, you know, to see what kind of texture and skin tones he was using, and I really applied it to the retouching when we did the retouching. And yeah, that's what I had in mind. I really wanted them to be like paintings. I wanted it to be chic. I didn't want to be vulgar. And it was such a contrast with what I was seeing on set and what I was seeing when I was looking at the combo, because it was, you know, it's behind the scenes on actual porn films. So I could also see what they were filming, and I could see in the combo what they were looking for. And I mean, our views were really totally different. Which was incredible to see. And I was an observer, you know, because I was behind the scene. I was, you know, there was nothing to gain for them. They just let me have access to the set. So I didn't want to disturb. I could not disturb the set. I couldn't be like, hey, pause for a second. Can I take a shot?
Yeah.
So that's also why I think those pictures are really, I really took the space of an observant, really like a fly on the wall, 100%.
Strange, bizarre connection, but I actually shot a behind the scenes porn story for a magazine about 5 years ago. It's a very strange kind of situation to be in. I found it very difficult to shoot, you know, because it's, how do you kind of, there's just so much, for want of a better word, going on. And, you know, it's, I just felt so kind of awkward and out of place shooting it, even though everyone else was, you know, for them, it's their totally normal everyday line of work, but it's just was this really alien thing. It was kind of interesting to shoot, and I had a chance to go back and do another day of shooting, and in some ways I wish I'd gone back, but I was like, no, I'm done. And it was a shame, because the first day was all interiors and incredibly hard to kind of, you know, you're relying on the light that they've got. And the thing with yours is their situation is, you know, there was a lot of, you know, you're doing it in a very different environment. I think mine was a Game of Thrones porn parody, and it was for a magazine at the time called Shortlist. So it was a lot more kind of, I don't know the way to put it, but put it this way: the work is not on my website.
No, it was definitely challenging at times to shoot, because definitely, yeah, I was also relying on their lighting, and I was really at the limit of my cameras, because I shot film, I shot medium format camera. And so I was literally all the time at, you know, f4 at a 60th of a second, pretty much all the time at, you know, 400 or 800 ISO. And so it was, yeah, there was not much light, but I remember the first day, every single first day that I arrived on set, it was pretty, I don't know if shocking is the word, but you really have to adapt again. You have to adapt to the environment, and you have to adapt that people are in front of you and they're having sex. And but then, funny enough, I feel that after 2 or 3 days, it just becomes normal, because I was going on sets with them, and I would spend 3 to 4 days with them, and I was sharing rooms with some of the actresses. And so it was a really full on experience, and I was really immersed with them. So maybe that also helped for me to be part of the crew, and then for them to forget me. There's also something that, being a woman is very different from being a man and shooting. I think I could allow myself to have more fun and to have more intimacy, especially with the women, because I was more and I'm more interested in shooting the female body. So so I think as a man, I'm sure it's a bit harder.
I just felt like, that's not what I shoot normally, so it's kind of very, very alien to me. And the whole thing with, I'm sure we'll go on to talk about this later, but like male gaze and female gaze and how how you represent what you're seeing. I was trying to shoot it in a very abstract way, but it was tricky because a lot of it was interior and very dimly lit, and so it was a bit of a nightmare if I'm honest.
But it's interesting you say, it was difficult for you to shoot, because it's exactly the reason I went to shoot this. At the very beginning of my work, I was shooting mostly my friends, and I was shooting kids, and I felt that my work was very naive, and that it needed something that, I was lacking some strengths. So I had this idea to shoot people naked for a series, and I had this idea. I wanted to shoot them after they had sex. It was called Just After, but I couldn't ask my friends to be shot in that series because I had never done it, and I was too terrified to shoot them or even to see them having sex. So my ex-agent at the time mentioned killing kitchen parties in London. And she knew the person who was organizing it. Killing kitchen parties are like kind of sex parties, high-end sex parties in London. And so she organized for us to go to one of them. And the idea was for me to see if I could find some potential candidates to work for me. And I went there, and this was the very first time that I was seeing anyone having sex in front of me, and it was I remember it was an eye opener for me. I thought it was so gorgeous and so beautiful. I could see this body entwined. And talking about the female gaze and male gaze, we've been used to see in films sex being shot by male DOPs, and it's shot in a very it's shot in the male gaze way. And so what I was feeling, I had never seen it before. And so I was just so interested to shoot it. I really wanted to have my camera, which is not possible. You can't have a camera there. And then as it turned out, towards the end of the night, I met a porn director and his girlfriend. And we were talking, and they were really friendly. And they invited me to one of their sets, which was in Stoke-on-Trent, in a 17th century castle. So that was the first shoot. So here I go, 2 weeks later, I'm on the train and going to Stoke-on-Trent, not really knowing where I'm going or who they are. And that was the beginning of the story. And then I followed them for 4 years on different sets around the world. But but really the idea was to push myself and to do something that was, that I had not done before, and to really give it a bit of more substance. So that, and I think the exhibition was not just about the pictures, it was also about the actresses. And there was headphones at the exhibition where you could hear the actresses talking about their point of view of the industry. And, most of them were talking about how much they're happy to do the job and how much they get paid and they enjoy having sex and they're traveling and it's amazing. Or there's this other one who says, "Oh, it was brilliant. I was really scared of this scene, but I came 5 times. It was brilliant." So it was very interesting to hear a different point of view from the industry, because you're used to hear that it's seedy and that the women are abused, and so the women I met were very different. So that's what I wanted to portray. And so this exhibition was very important for me, because it really started I started to understand that I didn't just want to make pictures. I also wanted to have a point of view. Right. And I wanted to go further it was not just about doing an exhibition with pictures on the walls. I wanted to really tell a story. And I think obviously that strength of
having a point of view and, you know, raising questions with photography is super important, but it's also obviously what has, you know, in some ways led to more interest in people's work is when it's, you know, it's tackling an issue or it has an opinion. Because I mean, we're so used to being saturated with images that are, for want of a better word, relatively meaningless, that actually when you see a body of work that's held together and clearly has kind of a point of view, it stands out from the crowd.
Yeah, well, also it's so I can talk about, maybe I didn't want to be a mom, which is my second exhibition. And so I didn't want to be a mom. It talks about my struggles in accepting my new identity as a mother.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this exhibition where there was photographs, there was a video, there was the sound of a woman giving birth. I even bottle smelled a newborn head. So there was this perfume, and I mean, it was incredible because it was multi-sensory. And the end of the exhibition was a diary text that I had written that was about 15 minutes to read, and it was taking the viewer into the journey of a mother who was not sure she wanted to be a mother because she was, you know, I was really very early on in my career as a photographer when I became pregnant. And so I was really, really scared. So the entire exhibition is all about that. Is all about my process into motherhood. Maybe I can talk about it, and then I can tell you the result of the exhibition. I don't know where you want to start.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'd like to kind of start with. I mean, first, I guess my first point on this would be the reason. I mean, I remember seeing this come up, and I remember reading interviews with you at the time when this project was kind of being published, and it was quite refreshing, I guess, to see somebody being honest about something like this and actually coming forward and saying something which is not necessarily taboo, but most people would be like, oh, well, we don't really necessarily talk about what it feels like. You know, you hear about people becoming parents and parenting and what's involved. And I think we're becoming better at it, it's becoming easier to be a bit more honest about it. But for a long time, it was just kind of unspoken about, and especially for mothers and new mothers and the kind of difficulties that women go through. So I think for me, when I first saw it, it was just really refreshing to see. And did you feel like it had that response from people, or what response did you get with the project? What feedback did you get?
So the feedback was just incredible. And I was really scared when I started to do the project because, you know, first of all, when I was pregnant, I hid my first pregnancy. I didn't want anyone to know that I was pregnant. I was really scared that this was going to have an influence on my work, that people were going to stop hiring me because I was a mother. And then in the art world, you know, the subject of motherhood is still somewhat taboo. I don't think, you know, it's really coming out now, like really now in 2022. But in 2019, when I did the project, there was no artist who was talking about motherhood. And so, you know, being a mother and doing a project on motherhood, I was really scared that I was also really going to cancel myself. But for me, it was a real therapy because as you say, I think, you know, you say it's a little bit of a taboo. It was definitely a big taboo in 2019, and even more in 2013 when I gave birth to my son. And so after I gave birth to my second daughter, I really realized what I had been through and how I had felt so overwhelmed and trapped and alone in my experience of being a mother. And so, you know, I really wanted to do a project where I was putting everything on the table, and it was a sort of therapy for me. It was really I was not really thinking, is it going to make headlines or is it going to do something? I was really thinking more about me and about my work and about who I was, and I really wanted to express all of this. But I did feel guilty. And then when we started, so the exhibition was done during Unseen in 2019, and the exhibition was in my house. I live on the basement. on the ground floor of it's a big house. It's a ground floor, and it's really close to the fair. So it's the perfect setting. But when we started to put the letters, I didn't want to be a mom, on the front door, I thought, oh my God, the neighbors are going to come and they're going to say, who are you? They see me with my kids every day. And I was so scared of what people were going to say. But I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter, because if I can help just one woman to overcome, what she's going through, and if I can help just a few women, that would be great. And in my head, the world was divided in two parts. There were the women who were struggling, and then there were the other mothers who were the most part of it, who were, making the most out of their kids and their time with their kids, and they were happy. And so that was kind of like how I thought the world was. What I discovered at the exhibition is that it's a lie. So 100% of women will go through a phase, and it's called matrescence. I can explain to you what it is. They will go through a phase where they're struggling, and they've lost their identity, and they're trying to grasp with the fact that they're a mother, and they're trying to find their identity again. And of course, it's not easy. You've spent 30x years of your life building a personality and building who you are. And then suddenly you're a mother, and you're supposed to have everything into place in 3 months. No, that's not what happens. What happens is most mothers, for them, it takes them, for me, it took 5 years. It can take 3 to 5 to even, 10 years to really go through this phase and really understand who you want to be as a mother, and really reconnect with your identity. And so the response I had was incredible. Every single woman was in tears. We had to buy tissues to put at the end of the exhibition, because everyone who was reading the diary text was just in tears, and then they were coming back to hug me, and it was so overwhelming. I really had no idea this would be the response, and so I was really shocked. And then I was also a bit pissed off, because I was thinking, why is nobody talking about it? Why am I in 2019? Why am I just a photographer who's setting, a taboo out there, and who's talking about it? But I think it's really important, and I really love talking about it. And I do interviews, and I do talks about the subject, because I realize that it's still not really been talked about. People don't really understand what it is. And so I did a lot of research about, all of this. And, there's also something that is called ambivalence. So when you're a mother, you always experience this ambivalence, which is you really craving for your son or your daughter to be close to you, for your kids to be close to you. And you really want, you want them close. But at the same time, you just want your space, and you're craving to be out, and so you're constantly feeling two things that are completely opposite at the same time. It's not going to be nice. It's not going to feel nice, of course. It's a tug of war of emotions. You're like constantly put into two different places.
Yeah, it's a hell of a conflict.
It's a hell of a conflict. Yeah.
And then I guess the offshoot is a feeling of guilt, and that's a big part of it, isn't it? A feeling of guilt that lots of parents get to go through stages where they feel like they're failing as a parent, because ultimately you've lived your life most people live their lives in very, this isn't a criticism, but very selfish ways. And when you become a parent, suddenly all of that spare time goes out the window. And I think if you're, in inverted commas, it's different for everyone, but I can only speak from my personal experience as a creative, in inverted commas, you are used to all of the things that involves, the hustling, the kind of the problem solving, but also the kind of time to yourself to think and to ponder and to be inspired and all of that. And obviously you're going to get some elements of that being a parent, but you're also denied a lot of the time that previously would have been allocated to that. So then you notice that in your practice to some extent, and you can feel resentful, but also then you feel guilty, and you flip between the two, and then you kind of beat yourself up about it.
For sure. I think, I mean, there's 100% a part of you that is really mourning your old life. And that is difficult to think that is difficult to think, did I make the right decision? Is it also, am I the only one thinking about that? Am I the only one? I think I can hear that you have that feeling, but as a father, I feel like there's less, it's less harsh than as a mother. As a mother, there's this mother figure. You're supposed to be, it's supposed to be natural, and you're supposed to just embrace motherhood and in his 100% just when you become a mother. And
there's a lot more societal pressure, isn't there?
100%.
From a mother's point of view, because traditionally, from a father's point of view, if you look back at the last couple of generations, the father would have been a lot more stood back from things. And now, there's I think most people in my generation who are fathers are probably, generally speaking, a bit more hands-on than their own fathers were.
Yeah.
So there's less pressure because you're basically coming from a place whereas it wasn't that great before. So whatever you do is actually a bonus.
It's amazing
and actually a good thing. Whereas it's the opposite for women, because they're in a place where previous generations would have been very much 100% focused on that, and now they're trying to juggle having careers and lives and stuff that they probably always were, but society never expected them to have anything other than being a mother.
It's so true.
So whatever you do, you kind of feel judged for it, probably.
Damned if you do.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, I remember very clearly the very first time I saw the 2 lines on the pregnancy test. I thought that I was, never going to have a career anymore. I thought this is it. This is the end. Because, as you said, I think we are really the first generations who are trying to have it all and trying to understand how it is working. And as a woman, I think that was the hardest for me. That was really this sense of loss of freedom. And I thought that, I was like, my work is only going to be about kids now. It's going to be disgusting. But I don't know. I had this really bad idea that when you become a mother, suddenly you become really soft and everything you do it doesn't have any purpose.
I think it's also culturally a lot dependent on where you are culturally, where you are living in the world. Have you found? I know, for example, like in the UK, we're pretty crap at and it might just be because of what current administration or whatever, but generally, I think childcare, for example, in this country is awful compared to
expensive.
Yeah, the possibilities that you get, especially in Scandinavian countries, but I know obviously you're based in Amsterdam. I've got friends in Amsterdam, and I know that the situation there again is different to what it is over here. I think in the UK there's really not much support from the state in terms of actually saying, it's important that we try and subsidise to some degree childcare so that mothers can get back to work and fathers can get back to work, etc. But have you found that, say, for example, you are treated at all differently, being a mother or having a child on set in different countries? Because obviously you shoot internationally.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know where to start because there was too many questions in your. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that you're saying that are great. Let's take a step back. No, but I think you've made a really good point as a mother when you start having a kid, and if you're a photographer, for instance, the majority of my time is at the studio, and I'm not shooting 300 days a year. Maybe I have 8 jobs a year, and then the rest is I'm working on my personal work, I'm working on my portfolio, I'm doing invoices, all the things we know that we're doing as freelance photographers. And so when you go to the studio, when you become a mother, you're really not earning anything. And then suddenly there's this pressure. I really felt this pressure. I was thinking, it's costing me way more money to go to the studio rather than just look after my baby. So, I think for me that really was a shift that I had to do mentally, thinking that the time at the studio is sometimes that, I will get it back eventually, but you really it's a really leap of faith, and I think, that's also why there's such a gender disparity in the art world is because, you know, in spite of their talent, you know, there will always be a time when a woman actually, she reaches, you know, her full potential around, I would say, I don't know, late 20s, early 30s, and bam, that's when she has to become a mother, and that's when she becomes pregnant. So it's really difficult, you know, and as a freelance, it's a lifestyle that is risky. You know, you don't know when the next job is coming. So yeah, I mean, I've read stats about, for instance, about Hollywood, about the fact that there's only 4% of female DOP and 11% of directors, which is still insane. But even there was an article at the AOP that was saying that I think in the UK there's 70% of students who are female, but only 15% of them make it as professional photographers. So, you know, you have to ask yourself, what is it? You know, is it because the work has been done by male, and so, you know, it's a male gaze, it's a man's world, so that's, you know, it carries on being this way, or is it because of these problems with childcare, or yeah, it's I think it's very interesting. You know, there's a lot of women-led organizations now that are popping up, and in the last few years, you know, Firecracker Women Photograph, the F22 from the AOP, and they're really trying to make the work of women photographers more out there, so that hopefully the gender gap stops. But I don't know if to respond to your last question, to your last point, I don't know if I'm treated differently as a woman on set. You know, it's funny. I called my agent last week and I said, James, I have to ask you a question. Am I paid less than any man? You know, it had never occurred to me, because they have women and male photographer at the agency. But it had never occurred to me that maybe I could be paid less. Suddenly I was like, oh my God, maybe I am paid less. And he said, no, but who knows? You're going to have to ask me the question. So no, he said that there's some people who hire male photographers, but when they hire a woman, you know, the price doesn't make a difference. Right. So yeah. So I think, yeah, we're not that many women. We're not that many women photographers. And when I became pregnant, I didn't really have any role model. I really didn't know anyone who had been a photographer and who was succeeding in having a career and having kids. The only photographer I knew who had kids was Annie Leibovitz, but she also was not really, you know, showing her as a mother, and you know, it feels like she was so big that she probably had such a big staff that it didn't really matter if she had kids or not. So, or Sally Mann, who I feel that, you know, she was, from what I understand from her picture, I have no idea about her life, but you know, she was not doing commercial work, and she was mostly with her family. So I didn't have any role model of women who had done it, and that was really scary.
Yeah, no, because it's so important to have those within the industry, so that you can kind of feel like the things that you're going through, someone else has gone through before. You know, those difficult
and
decisions.
has done it. That it's possible. I think it's knowing that it's possible to do it. And it's funny. I received, you know, sometimes I receive messages on my Instagram from women, and not long ago, I need to put it on my Instagram, but not long ago, there's this woman who messaged me. I want to read you what she said. She said, I've always been super focused in the studies and my career as photographer and director, saying that I never want to have a family because I want to be a photographer, not a mom. Then I heard your story and I saw your project, and actually, I think you inspire me to just be a person, a woman that can be everything she wants, even if I work in a creative environment. Oh my God, that was everything when I received this message. It's
what an amazing message to get.
Right? I know, it was just so beautiful. It's still printed on my desk. When I feel down, I look at it, because yeah, I mean, I think this is everything. This is everything I'm, you know, working towards. And I didn't want to be a mom was exactly this. It was, I think what it felt like, it was that I was empowering women. I was showing women my struggles, and we were sharing the same struggle. And I really think I helped women. So this is for me, you know, really why I'm doing this job, and what I want to carry on doing. There's been also another example about breastfeeding at work. Do you want to hear about that?
Yeah, because that was an area where I'd read an article with you where you talked about taking your baby onto set, and I guess that's where I came in with the cultural question as well, because in some places the acceptance of children is different. You know, if you go to like Italy, for example, I mean, maybe this is just where I've gone in Italy, but you know, you could imagine that you'd be kind of in the evening, you'd have kids running around and playing, and it's kind of like an acceptable part of society. But some countries you can go to where you just don't see that as much. You don't see the children being involved as much in the adults' lives. And I think certain cultures probably just treat and deal with children differently. And I know that from reading the interview, you had a run-in with somebody on set because you were breastfeeding. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay?
So I mean, yeah. So I started my journey of breastfeeding with my son, who I gave birth to in 2013. And so, you know, I breastfed him for a year, and I didn't want to stop working whilst I was breastfeeding him. And quite quickly, I got some jobs, and it involved being abroad. So it was this job for a big company, for an advertising agency and a big company. And so, you know, in 2013, it was still a very big taboo. So I was sneaking him away to feed him in basements and bathroom, because, you know, at the time, you know, breastfeeding was still a very well kept secret. And I remember feeling horrible about it. I was really feeling like a horrible mother, not for my child, but more, I was kind of feeling that I wanted it all, and that it was not acceptable, and maybe that I was not a professional photographer for doing this. I don't know. I had all these conflicting emotions. But as a mother, definitely, he was not empowering me. He was not making me feel good. You know, when you sneak in the basement to feed your kids in between shots, it doesn't make you powerful. And so, I mean, I'm not going to tell you all the stories, but basically at some point we had to show that I had a baby on set, because we were shooting someone in his property, and he had the property the size of Amsterdam. So it was really hard to just sneak the baby in the basement somewhere. And the client or the agency got really mad at it. And I heard this story for like maybe 6 months with my agent. We were talking about it all the time because he was always coming up. And he really made me feel really unprofessional.
That's safe.
But then 5 years later, in 2017, I was like, okay, surely, you know, the world is a different place now. You know, I can breastfeed, and I can be free breastfeeding on set, especially since, you know, I'm a professional photographer. So the setting is that I have a baby. She comes on set for breakfast, and then after 5-10 minutes, she goes off with the nanny. They go out and play, and they have they have fun. They're not even on set. They're not even on the premises. And then when lunchtime comes, she comes back, and I feed her. Basically, that was what was happening. But I had tons of problems, tons of remarks from client and advertising agencies, and I thought it was really crazy. But it was nothing that I can really point my finger on. It was just small remarks and things like that. And then at some point, we got a job, and when my producer started to say that I needed to breastfeed at lunchtime, the job got cancelled. And they said that it was going to be too complicated for me to breastfeed at lunchtime.
That's so outrageous and bizarre as well at the same
complicated.
time.
Complicated. Yeah, because, well, the shoot involved also celebrity, and I think everyone was a bit scared. You know, it's difficult because, you know, although I judge and I did judge and I did write an article, you know, my whole purpose of writing the article and also not naming the agency or the people that, you know, I did it with was also to say, you know, it's not acceptable. We should not do this. But also, you know, we have to look at the way it is now, because it has to change, you know. And so I think it's a mentality at some point, you know, people want to do job well, and they're producers, and there's people, and there's client, and then if you add something to the mix that is a baby that might cry on set, you know, people start to freak out. But it should be normal. And I think if it had happened after post-COVID, I think it would be a bit better. You know, everyone's seen, you know, that after COVID, everyone knows that parents, you know, there's parents and they have families, you know, people who work, the workforce has families, they have kids. And so I think now it would be, I guess, I'm hoping that it would be a bit more acceptable. But at the time, it was really not. It was, and it was really difficult because, you know, at some point I had to think, do I really want to do this job? And so the only option would have been to stop breastfeeding. But, you know, you don't want to stop breastfeeding for a job. It's not what it should be. No. And also you're in a period of your life where you're at your most vulnerable as a mother, as a human being. And so you're really looking for people who are going to encourage you. And I mean, it's incredible. When I think about what I did when Louison was so small and Jules were so small, you know, I was taking them to Cape Town to shoot when they were like 9 months old, and I was on my own on the flight, and I was doing the nights on my own, and I delivered amazing images, and I have amazing memories with those kids. But it was tough. I mean, it was crazy to just do that. So
I can imagine.
So anyone should have encouraged me and say, "Oh my God, what you're doing is amazing. You know, it's brilliant. You're doing your job at your best." Also, you know, you're going to give an opportunity to a mother. She's definitely going to give you 150%. She's going to die before, you know, if she can't complete the job, it's because she's dead. You know, she's and we you know, we become really good at multitasking. So there's no time lost. So I think, so the article was all about this. It was really about we should really encourage women, and it was not just about breastfeeding. You know, I think the issue was also bigger than that. It was also thinking about these women who have to pump at work, and you know, they want to return to work, but it's extremely difficult for them to pump. You know, where do they pump, and do they have meeting rooms, and can they do it in meetings? I mean, it's really thinking about. It was at the time. It was really thinking about you know, how do we you know, carry on the work with the women, you know, like just make it easy for them.
Yeah, I think like the industry as a whole perhaps fails to some extent on things in general when it comes to actually the well-being of people on set. Not all the time, and it's certainly got better. But myself and Tom were talking about this earlier about kind of, you know, and actually our guest last week was mentioning it. You know, the idea of lunch times on set sometimes can get squashed to the point where they're not considered, that actually you need a break for lunch, or you need to be working, not crazy hours. And I think that the industry as a whole almost has this kind of slightly masochistic, maybe macho kind of approach to it, of like, you just power through and get everything done. And it's actually not that conducive to, you know, creating good creative work, to put that much kind of pressure on and not have the breaks or the facilities in place to be able to breastfeed, for example, you know, or to sit down and actually be able to eat your lunch at a table, rather than stood around munching it off a digi cart with a digi screaming at you.
No, for sure. But also, like, you have to remember that when you breastfeed, it's like 10 minutes, not more than this. So I can breastfeed and eat at the same time. You know, I think it was more, you're right. You know, I think well-being on set is definitely something we can talk about. And here it was really about just people being scared. I think just people not taking into account that there's that it's not just, you just don't have a human in front of you. You have an entire system, and it's also the family sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess I think, to go back to earlier points, I think anybody who's gone through being a parent would probably have a lot more kind of relaxed and liberal view on it, I imagine, because they understand it and they also get the love and the attention that's required and comes as part of being a parent. And I think before you've gone through that, it can seem quite alien that someone would bring a baby on set, maybe, like, because you can't relate to it in any way. But once you become a parent, you wouldn't even question it. Does that sound right?
No, that sounds right. Yeah. And I came across an executive creative director one day. I was going to do a shoot, and because I had so many problems with Louison being on set, we were doing the PPM, and I said, I started to say, well, I have to tell you something, guys. I'm comfortable having this conversation, but I'm going to have to breastfeed Louise on set, so it's not going to take long. She's not going to be on set very much. She doesn't cry, blah blah blah. And then the ECD stopped me, and he was like, "Listen, I'm the one who's uncomfortable having this discussion. It's such a normal thing that we shouldn't even discuss about it." And I was like, "Oh my god, God, you're incredible. I mean, I love you." This was just, and this guy, he had 5 kids. So he understood. He understood, but he got it. But the normal thing, I don't know, this is just what I wanted to hear. And and so I think it kept me going, and I felt empowered, and I just wanted to make better work for him. I wanted to give 3,000% and not just 150. It was also this. It's the mindset. It's helping mothers to go back to your work. We were talking about the gender gap. If you don't allow these women who are breastfeeding, I breastfed my youngest daughter for 2 years. If you don't allow me to work for 2 years, there's, I'm really falling behind, in terms of money, in terms of the work that I'm doing. And so yeah.
Well, that kind of brings me on nicely to my next question, really, which is, since obviously your children are a bit older now, I believe your youngest is around 5. Is that right?
Yeah.
How are you finding kind of balancing being a parent and, creating work, finding work, being creative, shooting your own projects? Did you have to compartmentalize? What was your approach to try and kind of maintain your momentum?
Well, balancing. It's a good word. I think it's an illusion. Nothing really feels balanced. It feels quite chaotic, like a constant battle. No, I feel like I do have to prioritize one thing and then the other. Even though I'm completely out of the fog from early motherhood, and it's way better. So that I think once your kids reach the age where they go to school, it's suddenly it's a lot better. Life is easier, feels easier. But then there's always a lack of time, right? I'm always thinking, what the hell was I doing with all my time when I was not a parent? Seriously. Right?
Completely.
But I think, I don't know, I think in my own experience, having children has made my work way deeper in exploration, with a lot more sensibility, and because I don't have that much time, I'm also good at knowing what is going to work or what is not going to work. I'm also good at doing this quicker. So when I have ideas and I'm thinking, I should do this, quite quickly I realize if it's worth it or not worth my time.
It does focus. It does focus the mind slightly, doesn't it? Yeah,
a lot more. So, to my younger self, who was really scared of being a mother, I think I would tell her that being a mother and being creative can work, and it makes you more human. I think it made me a better person. I think I'm way more empathetic towards people.
I think That's quite
right?
a universal feeling, isn't it? Once you become a parent, you kind of, it's almost like there's a lot of things that suddenly click into place and starts to make a lot more sense.
Yeah. And I think if you shoot people like I do, if you have empathy, that's quite a good quality to have, right? So I do cry too much when people tell me their stories, or when I feel when I feel touched by something. But that I didn't do that before. I can't watch. There's some certain movies that I can't watch anymore. But but no, being a mother, I think it's I think it's, you just need, as you said before, I have a partner who's amazing, who's when he's not here, I definitely see that he's doing half of the job. And so I think it's, I would not be where I am today if he also was not here to support me and to be here when I'm away and I'm traveling, and I can leave the house and I just take my suitcase and I don't put notes all over the place to say, don't forget the kids. That would probably be what he would do. Actually, when he goes, I'm like, what do you put in the lunchbox again? I forgot. It's more the way around. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I guess it's that thing of we myself and Tom have discussed this, the idea of trying to stay focused and how to maximize your efficiency with your time. It quite often goes against the type of people that become photographers to some degree, because there's a lot of people in the industry who do it because they like to kind of spend time thinking about things and are quite whimsical and maybe a bit more used to kind of allowing things to kind of flow in a gentle way. And sometimes when you're parenting, you know that you've got a certain amount of hours before they're out of nursery, or you need to be home to do bedtime and do dinner and all that kind of stuff. And it really focuses the mind. It also panics you at the same time.
Yeah, I would lie if I was to say that it's easy. I think it's definitely difficult, especially for personal projects. When for commission work, I go into this zone where I know what I'm doing, and I know the team I need to put together, and it kind of flows. But for personal projects, yeah, it's a lot deeper. So I do need some time. I have this idea that at some point I'm just going to buy a train ticket to go anywhere in the Netherlands, and just go and sit, and then go somewhere to a city, and like Rotterdam or Den Haag or something, and then work in a cafe from there, and then come back on the train, because sometimes that's all you need, is just getting out of your house and really, making the time to write the short film that I'm writing, or, like doing this thinking about what I want to do next. I'm going to do it. Actually, I'm off. My train leaves in a half an hour. I'm going to have to go, guys. No, I'm joking.
Oh, for a minute, I was just like, wow, that's great.
Wow, that was quick. Wow, that's amazing. She is really doing it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, is there, I mean, this is kind of the questions that we had. Is there any other points that you wanted to raise before we move on to your desert island camera and your desert island photo book?
Oh yeah. Let me check my notes to see if there's there was this really good quote. Where is it? I wanted to say it because I thought it made me laugh when I saw it. So we were talking about the art world and how it is difficult to be a female and an artist and a mother all at the same time. And Tracey Emin said in an interview in 2014, of course there are good artists who have children. They're called men. Actually, no, the sentence is exactly not this. There are good artists who have children. Of course there are. They are called men.
Oh, fantastic. You can always trust Tracey to come up with a bit of a blinder.
So, yeah, it says it all, right?
Yeah.
We're
both sat here silent because we're kind of we're both like
but it does say we were talking about how I think there's also sometimes that you lose when you're a mother and an artist is when do you go to openings of exhibitions? It's exactly during bedtime when do you mingle? When do you go to Arles for 3 days just because you want to go to Arles to meet people? I mean, it's really time that you have to set aside for yourself, and it's hard to do this because it's hard to justify it.
Yeah, you need to be in a position where you can have that open discussion with your partner and say, like, this is important to me, and that is, as you said, society places a lot more emphasis on the mother kind of being there for the child rather than the father. I do hope that that's changing, but I don't know. I mean, it's different for each person. I think generally we've still got such a long way to go with it.
Yeah, but it's I think it also works for fathers because, you know, I was looking at artist residencies. You know, as a young father, I don't think you would want to go for 3 months off to Rome to do a project, right? So, you know, artist residencies are really not tailored for parents, and they're really tailored for people who don't have families. So I do hope that.
I think it's the very nature of last minute jobs as well. That's another big thing, you know, in the photography world, that you kind of get some brief come through and you think you must have had this for weeks and weeks and months, and it's only now that you're deciding that next week you need to figure out whether or not this is a goer with this photographer, you know, and it involves flying away for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I can't thrust that on my family at the last minute. Like, when you've got other people relying on you and mouths to feed and everything, you've got to find a way of, you know, it's only kind of respectable, you know, a matter of respect to be able to give people time to kind of plan and prioritize. But I think, unfortunately, and I agree, I think it's probably similar to the artist residencies, those kind of situations tend to favor the people that don't have any responsibilities because they can afford to do that. Whereas when you're a parent, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you know, we're not from the Netherlands, and none of us is. So my partner is from Paris. My parents are from the Alps. It's we don't have anyone around, so we just have to rely on each other. So it is hard sometimes.
Yeah,
the
idea
thing.
of dropping everything and going is now an alien concept, really, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, my father had kind of coincided with post-COVID. My first child was born in the depths of the first kind of COVID pandemic, so they're a coronial through and through. But
coronial, is that what we call them now?
Well, it's like millennial, but
I like that.
So they, you know, for me, I used to shoot a lot of travel assignments, and two things really happened with COVID. One, a lot of my travel clients just ceased to exist, and two, Brexit fully happened. Actually, three things, and three, like I think generally those travel assignments kind of just, whether or not it's to do with the clients disappearing, but they kind of became fewer and further between. So in a way, it kind of worked out for me because it was fortuitous timing that naturally those things were waning away anyway, as I was getting to a position where it was more difficult to take those super last minute jobs. But I think if that hadn't have been the case and I'd had a child, you know, 5 years earlier when I was at the height of my traveling for work, I would have found that incredibly difficult to make that sacrifice, especially when your career's on an upwards trajectory and you know that you're going to have to say no to a job and that somebody else is going to take it and you really were looking forward to that job. And then, of course, that puts pressure on your family and your relationship because then you kind of, you know, you're probably going to be a bit moody for a day or two. You know.
I've never been moody.
I thought it was your middle name, Tom.
It's not far off.
No, I mean we've both been in those situations, I know, and I'm sure you have too, Sophie. But yeah, I think those are interesting points. I think I could talk for hours, to be honest. Like, there's so much I'm still fascinated by, and I'd love maybe in the future we can revisit and get you back on when we're in season 4.
Definitely.
But for now, I'd love to ask you the question that we always ask our guests, which is your desert island photo book and your desert island camera. So the whole premise being you're thrust onto this island, and
which has a lab.
Yeah, it has a photo lab, so it could be a film camera.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how big the book is. It could be a volume of books, but we use it as a gauge to see kind of what inspires you.
So my desert island camera would definitely be a Pentax 6.7 Mark II.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's been chosen before. That's a beast.
It's with the best shutter sound of any camera ever.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah.
They do break quite a lot, though, don't they?
Well,
shutter's massive.
That's the problem. I was going to say, can I actually go to the island with the guy who repairs them?
Yeah,
you have to ask him. Right. You're coming with me, Sonny.
He's like my best friend now. I know his phone by heart. Yeah, no, I have 4 of those, and
I mean, I don't want you to give away your contact, but is your guy in the Netherlands or is he in London? Or
he is in the Netherlands. No, he's amazing. It
is getting to that stage where I'll be talking to somebody in the studio, and you know, there's quite a few film shooters that I share a studio with, and they'll have a problem with one of their cameras, and they'll be like, "Oh, the guy you need to speak to," and there'll be one guy or woman, normally old men, to be fair, who are kind of based in the middle of nowhere, but they're the one person that's still alive that knows how to repair that particular camera.
Yeah.
I've got a wide lux, an f7 wide lux, which is like a Japanese panoramic swing lens camera. And I honestly don't know who I'd go to if I ever needed that repaired. I think there was like one person who could do it.
In the middle of an industrial estate somewhere.
Yeah. So you've got this Pentax 6.7 though. What's your film of choice for it?
Kodak Portra for sure, 400.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. And obviously in this fantasy world, it doesn't matter the fact that it's now 3 times the cost of what it used to be or whatever it is. How much it went up? Like 100. How much was it? It went up like
it's insane.
25%, or
is it 15 a roll now?
Yeah, they put the price up anyway.
Yeah, I don't look when I pay now. I'm just avoiding. I just avoid. I just go there. I ask a few boxes and I just put my card on it. That's it. That's it. I don't want to look at the invoice. Yeah,
look away when you punch in your pin.
It's just so silly because, I mean, as film shooters, it's just so much better. The quality is just so much better. It's also a topic we could talk for hours, right? So,
yeah. I mean, do you actually? I mean, without wanting to divulge, but also wanting to divulge too far into this, how do you process your film? Do you have a particular lab in Amsterdam that you use? Do you then scan it, or do you get it hand printed and then scan it? Does it change depending on the job?
So I do have one lab, and I've been very faithful over the years. It's the same lab, same person, and they're called Bio. They're in London.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, we know Bio.
Shout out to Bio. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
They're in Soho Mayfair.
They're in Soho. Yeah, they're amazing, and they've been really amazing throughout my career. And so what I do is I usually ship the rolls to them. Yeah, I FedEx the rolls. If I'm in London, of course, I courier it. And they do processing scans, and then I do drum scans. Well, they do drum scans, so they have pretty much all my eggs somewhere in their office.
Oh, wow, okay.
And they keep my eggs as well. No, they've been really good to me, and when I shoot commercially, I also shoot film. So I've got into this system now where I shoot digital and I use it as like a Polaroid kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when everyone is happy and the client has kind of, said that they like the image, I will shoot it film. Mm-hmm. So that way I don't lose all the film that, you would lose if you were kind of to test things. And by the time I start shooting with the Pentax, I really know what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it's really nice because it also gives me this extra thing. I'm like, oh my God, this looks gorgeous. You look through the viewfinder and it's just, gives you this energy again.
It's interesting to have that as a process actually, because I find that if you especially when you're shooting digital, when untethered, it can be quite a stop-start process, and you can kind of get little changes being made all the time, and sometimes that's a good thing, and there are changes that you might have missed, but sometimes it actually really disrupts the flow of a shoot.
So hard to get a flow.
When you're shooting film, you've done your prep on digital, and then you're like, right, okay, you happy, okay, you trust me, I'm now going to shoot this on film. It must be quite liberating, because suddenly there's nobody who's going to be looking over the digital shoulder being like, oh, actually, can we just pause it there? And you're like, no, Come on, we were so close.
I'm just going to jump in.
And you refocus, because you're right. It's a very different way of looking, and then you're like, okay, what is it? And then you suddenly use your guts. It's not just you use your finger to take a picture. You really use your guts, and then you find different angles. And what I found is it's extraordinary is most of the time, it happens like 80% of the time. I would shoot like, I don't know, 2,000 images on the digital. It depends, if someone is running or something. And then, bam, I fire a few with the Pentax, and it's the best shot. It really is. And that's what the client goes for. So I like, looking at the ratio of how many images I always try to put into the final retouching, but it's usually pretty high. I've just done a job where I didn't think I shot that many images film, and out of I really didn't really shoot much, and out of 15 images we have 7, which is incredible, because I was really focused more on the digital and really not on the film, but it just happens that it's like this. It just works.
Yeah, I think also there's obviously this isn't the case if you're putting digital into the edit as well, but there's also a sense of when you shoot film, you've got the what's the term I'm looking for, the something of choice, when you've got too much choice, basically. And I think with digital it can be like that, whereas when you shoot film and you've got your 12 frames on a contact sheet, you're like, oh, it's definitely that one. You know what I mean?
For sure.
It's almost like a paralysis, because you've just got so many options.
And the more that cameras get, faster processors and stuff, you might as well be shooting a bloody film, because you're almost shooting more frames. You can shoot more frames than you would if you were filming now. So it's kind of madness. Okay, so moving on.
So we kind of diverted a bit.
Yeah, no. Sorry. Blame us. What about your photo book then?
Okay, so I was thinking, I don't have that many photo books. I'm not a collector, but there's this one book that I really love that has inspired me over the years, and it's from Martin Parr. It's called Flowers. I don't know if it's that famous. It was printed, I think, not that many copies, maybe like 2,000 copies or something. But it's got this lovely pink cover, and I used it as inspiration for my first exhibition. It's just love, and it's just flowers that have been shot all over. I think it's just really nice and poetic.
Oh, that's nice. It's good to get a book that, this is partly the reason why we ask, because we have such kind of interesting people coming on the show, and it's great to get these recommendations. Probably won't be buying it if there's only about 2,000 copies and it's Martin Parr. That's probably going to be unaffordable. But it'd be good to look that up. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. If people want to find out more, where can they look, Sophie? You're obviously on social media and stuff.
Yeah, I'm on social media, Sophie Ebrard. You can look at my website, also sophieebrard.com, and my agent's website. Yeah,
which is White Clark Jones. So we will link to all of that in the show notes. And all that's left to say is thank you so much for coming on and being so candid and sparing your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. No, it was great. Thank you very much.
Right, well, thanks for listening to this latest episode, guys. If you want to get in touch with the show, there are a myriad of ways to reach out to us. You can follow us on Instagram at xnegative. You can email us at info@exposenegative.com, and the website is exposenegative.com. We are also on Twitter at exposenegative, and personally, you can follow us if you really want to stalk people. We are at Greg Fennell and at tombarnes.com, and that is words.com, not symbols. Thank you. Bye.